Hello there, it's Josh here from racingtheprofit.co.uk. As always, I hope you can hear me and see me in the bottom right. Um, I'm recording this video on Tuesday the 18th, but it's highly likely if you're watching this, it will be sometime on Thursday onwards. But I thought I'd record it before I scoot back to the down south to the family home for Christmas. So, what I needed to do, given the abject performance of the big race tips and the kind of free big race 3 miles and further in the free posts. Yes, the abject performance of the last 3 weeks or so. I needed to give myself a good talking to, really. Uh, what I like to do, well, I should say I clearly haven't been in great form. The odd one has run well, um, but I haven't been near any really of the big priced winners from kind of 5 recent races. And what I like to do for my own benefit as much as anything else is take a look back at the winners to get in my head the profile and the sort of things I should have seen and I should have noted and why I should have given them more consideration in the race analysis. There's a couple of general points, I suppose, uh, when I talk through this. One of them is there's two aspects which are mental. And the biggest challenge for anyone who's a racing fan is all in the head, especially when things aren't going well. In general, of course, this video is aimed at those of you, I suppose, who one might be interested in how I think about the game and try and improve. Two, those of you who like to analyze racing yourself and pick out your own bets. Because as always with anything, I hope I might say something which gives you an idea or may make you think about something in a different way that with any luck may help you find even more winners and more profit moving forward. So that's the aim. I'm going to try and keep this under 20 minutes, which would be decent for me. So yes, there's the mental thing. Now, when you're in a losing run, I suppose, or you don't think you're reading big races very well, the tendency can be to grab the comfort blanket, and the comfort blanket in any race is horses near the top of the market. And for the life of me, the last 5 or 6 races, I've kind of steamed in to horses under 8 to 1 or so, near the top of the market in these big Class 2 Grade 3 handicaps. All of my success in big races since I started blogging, and certainly this year, has come from looking at horses that are 8 to 1, 10 to 1 or bigger, often 16 to 1 or bigger, and landing on those big price horses that get backed in and beat SP still. And veering away and taking on aggressively those near the top of the market. And for some reason, maybe because I've been a bit out of nick with big races, I've focused too much on the top of the market. Of course, having said that, every race I look at now, moving forwards over the Christmas period, is probably going to be won by something at 5 to 1. But there we go. That's how it goes. But I really need to get back to what I'm good at with these races. The story isn't too bad. We're still what are we, 190 odd points up this year, mainly to 1 point win in these big races. So I'm not going to complain. But the last few months, I have shoveled back plenty of points, but that's just the way it goes. And I need to land on the odd big winner. Now, the other thing, so there's the losing run element, and that does make, well, it clearly makes me look towards the head of the market, which is not a good thing in big races. I also think I haven't got the balance right. What you see in front of you here, the test best of the stats quals, those of you will know, the members post for my general approach in terms of has lots of stats qualifiers, section 1 against my trainer stats here. Test zone against loads of micro angles I kind of test and follow. But at the start of November this year, I wanted to test myself on the daily front because over time I've always been okay at the big race tips. I had a golden spell last September to December where my kind of daily tipping effort in the members post hauled in about 110 points from around 170 outlay, which maybe gave me too much confidence because then what happened during the rest of the year was a bit naff. But I wanted to practice what I preach in terms of I always say my content and the stats qualifiers find a lot of winners. Um, and they're a great kind of set of starting points. And I needed to kind of prove that to myself, I suppose. You can see the results in front of you there. It is kind of a test. It's going all right. I've found using my stats qualifiers as starting points before I then analyze using my own subjective form eyes. 99 bets, 25 winners, 48 of won or placed, plus 27, nearly plus 28 points, all to 1 point win on generally available morning odds. And that's been good, but in general, those horses have been priced in the 3-1 to kind of 8-1 range. And I think I've kind of been using those daily eyes a little bit to analysing big races. And big races, the money and the profit over time is definitely made by focusing on those kind of 10-1 plus, especially when you're talking about races which have kind of 10, 12, 14, 16 or more runners, where a lot of them will have been targeted at the race and will be there to run their best. So let's look through kind of 5 of the recent races where I've not only put up horses which may still be running, but I've also failed abjectly to focus enough on the winners. So I just want to flick through those 5 winners and talk about some of the things which I should have, which should be more prevalent in my head moving forwards over the next few months and for the rest of the jump season. Let's take Sizing Tennessee. So this was the Hennessy. He was 18, 20-1 generally in the morning, if probably a bit bigger the evening before. What mistakes did I make? One, I was too influenced by age. I'll often see a 10-year-old plus in a race like this and go, no. And you can get lazy with that analysis and not look in enough depth. In reality, he was only a second season chaser. He'd been running in novice chases last season. And as Colin Tizard said after the race, if he was a 7-year-old with this profile, he'd have been single figure odds, without a doubt. So there's that bias there. I think I also had a bit of a bias by the fact that he ran at Fontwell. And I thought, oh, he's coming here to the Hennessy. But I didn't really give him much of a look. It was a weaker renewal of the Hennessy in my mind in terms of going through it, and I knew that. It didn't feel, well, there have clearly been deeper grade 3 races, and I wouldn't exactly say with any certainty in this particular race that there are any Gold Cup or open grade 1 company horses lurking within it necessarily, but we will see if the likes of Thomas Patrick, Elegant Escape, and maybe the other one, Miss Parfois, can progress this season. But I wouldn't say any of them are necessarily Gold Cup horses on this evidence. So I knew that before the race, that it had a certain feel about it. What should I mention? The horse had class. I mean, I won't dive into this. He'd come a quarter of a length second at Cheltenham in January in a Grade 2 chase. He split 2 horses at the time that were rated in the low 150s. So that should give some indication that possibly off 148 he might have a bit in hand. And of course, with the mindset that he was still open to improvement. He'd run well in a novice chase there, possibly getting a bit outpaced or having to go too hard, or maybe having left his race behind in the run before. In the Grade 2, in the 4-miler at the Cheltenham Festival, he went very well. He clouted one. A few from home, which didn't help at all. But he generally travelled and jumped on the pace, travelled well on the pace, and jumped very well, bar one error. I think we can ignore the air run. He may have had enough by then, but that clearly wasn't his running. He then returned, bolted up at Fontwell. Tom Scudamore was on. That's an indication in the sense that was the first time Scudamore had ridden him. He'd won very well. There's a chance there that the horse actually was used to Tom Scu riding, or in any case responded to him. So him riding again may have been seen as a positive. So he arrived fit, in form, despite his age still open to progress. He had a touch of class, and like nearly every other chaser I'm about to focus on that follows, the other 4 that I kind of missed, he generally travelled on the pace or just off it and jumped well. And in any handicap chase, or any chase actually, the best place to be is either with an easy lead dictating on the front, or just off the pace in the kind of front quarter of the field where you can get in a rhythm. And what I would say is you're in a no excuses position there. And many of the winners I'm about to touch on ticked that box, and I've mentioned it before, but I really need to get that into my head. I should always want to have a prominent racer at decent odds who jumps well and travels well, races near the front. I should generally always want one of those on side in any race I look at. So that's him. The yard were in form. So I've mentioned things there that I looked at and that I kind of had a bias in my head, and I was drawn in. I'm not going to touch on Elegant Escape, but I was drawn in too much to near the top of the market. I went with a bigger price one who was actually shorter than Sizing Tennessee at the time, had fitness to prove. I knew he'd be held up. I knew he might get outpaced. I knew he might hit a fence, and I still went with him. And Sizing Tennessee was bigger odds at the time. So there's things there about that profile. I think I've mentioned everything there. He had a touch of class. His form was decent. He was unexposed. Actually, as a second-year chaser, so we could ignore his age. He wasn't like a normal 10-year-old. He was fit, in form, travels well on the pace, jumps well. Probably had Tom Scudamore. Well, there was a chance Tom Scudamore clearly got on well with him, and he might improve further for him riding. He had 57 days off leading up to a big race. That's some indication actually that this was probably a target. That can be seen with these types of races as a kind of target rest period, I think. Like I said, yard in form, prominent racer, and a good jumper. So they were all of those kind of things. You can see by the pace map here, I should mention I'm in the excellent GG's Gold, ggs.co.uk, and because I use those for a lot of my analysis and my kind of videos especially, you can get a 30-day trial for £1 at the link below this video, and I've added that because I am using Matt's excellent piece of kit to kind of explain here, so I should kind of advertise for him on that front. But if you like finding your own horses, it's certainly worth trialing. And you can see from the pace map there that he would kind of be prominent and probably be in a good spot. And you can see here from the pace map again, he generally races up there, and as he did in this race, he just tracked some of the early pace. So that's Sizing Tennessee. Things to learn there. Look at those in the 10 to 1 plus range. See if you can make a case using all those things I've just said. And those common factors do kind of appear in all the other horses that follow. And I've got 8 minutes left, so I'm going to whiz through these. We then moved on to Aintree, Beecher Chase. I won't focus on the two I went on. Crossview Boy, well, I said that. I should have gone my instinct, actually. When I watched his race back at Ayr, I kind of said he generally jumped okay. He was inexperienced. He's a second season chaser. Actually, on review, he was guessy at a few fences at Ayr. And actually, in hindsight, it's not a surprise that he took a few of these Aintree fences with him. And he also returned over hurdles. And for an inexperienced chaser, blowing cobwebs way over hurdles, which is a different jumping technique, to then come to these Aintree fences, which still look impressive and massive to the horse's eyes, certainly before some of the birch gets knocked off on the first circuit, but you only go around once in the Beecher Chase. So that was an issue there, and he was another one in the morning odds who was short enough, actually. Regal Flow, one of the errors I made with this race, actually, sitting in my flat in Liverpool looking out the window in the morning. It had been raining all evening, but actually I think I assumed that it was heavier than it actually was at Aintree, which was a error. I should have gone with the official going, which was generally soft, proper soft. But with that said, let's focus quickly on Walk in the Mill. Robert Wolford was in form again. These excellent GG's kind of in-form ratings, which you can see there what that green 14 means. So we had the Hennessy won by a yard, who were in banging form at the time. Wolford was banging form here. So was the horse. Now this is another one. Unexposed as a handicap chaser. Arguably he's 8 years old. You can kind of think there's more to come. These handicap chasers can improve as 7 and 8 year olds. He made a very good return after 300 days off, where he was actually staying on at the end. So he probably needed the run. He was 25 to 1, but he was staying on. Now, at this time of year, you can get horses which need the run and run well to a point and then fade out the back of the telly, and they can still go on. and clearly need to run and go on to win next time out. But certainly after returning after a break, running on after such a break is always a positive in my book, and certainly more of one than him getting tired 3 out and falling out the back of the telly. I was too judgmental on his going preference. So if we look at which was silly, I should have assumed Aintree was soft and not heavy. I questioned him on heavy. He bolted up over 20 furlongs in soft, so no issue there. He then, and what I then want to focus on is this Ascot run. So there's a bit of hot form here. So 63 horses, if you cast your eye to the right, came out of this and run since 11 winners, 19 of place. If I just focus on this race, it says I'm not currently logged in. Hold on. If I just focus on this race, hold on. Where am I looking? Yes, Ascot. You can see here the form. I mean, you can see what Frodon's done since, but he split there. He's rated 139 that Ascot race. Again, he was split in 153 horses, 007 since bolted up. Well, not bolted up. He won comfortably actually at Doncaster the weekend just gone. He's had a 151 Frodon at the time. He's clearly progressed since, and Gold Present 147. So that run at Ascot showed actually that he was decent, and that was only 1, 2, 3 runs before running in the Beecher, beaten 4 lengths off 139. There was every indication from that effort, surrounded by 147, 151 horses, that at some point he might show himself this season to be better than that handicap mark. Because I thought Aintree was heavy, I was lured in too much by this heavy ground run and being pulled up. Now, he may not have handled heavy, actually, but of course there could be any other reasons. He might have had a hard race at Ascot. The yard may not have been in as good as form then, I'm not quite sure. Then we knew he ran at Cheltenham in a decent race and ran well. And then he turns up at Aintree, unexposed, stamina clearly not a problem. He actually runs. He kept on for pressure there at Ascot over 24. There was every chance that he may improve for this step up in trip. The ground, even if I thought it was heavy, wasn't unknown. It wasn't like he was proven that he couldn't handle heavy. And yes, he was an unexposed horse, generally jumped well. I did have a feeling this race might go to one who'd never raced over the fences before, because I was happy to take on all those with course form, actually, as was the case because I tipped 2 that hadn't run over the race. So really, and he was 18 to 1 in the morning. Oh, goodness me. And I've cast aside and hardly looked at Walk in the Mill for an unexposed chaser, ticking all those boxes. And as you saw there with his profile, very consistent in handicap. So before this, he was what, 3 from 14. 9 times he'd won or placed in handicaps. He generally ran his race, and with all of the positives that I've just mentioned. And the final one, again, another one that would generally race prominent. He was mid-division this time, but in any case, wasn't a hold-up horse out the back of the telly, which isn't the place you generally want to be over fences. So that's Walk in the Mill. I think I've mentioned everything there that I wanted to. So a few points there for me to take away in terms of, again, unexposed profile, consistent, come on for the run, probably a target, decent level of hot form. Surrounded by horses rated much higher, could be better than this handicap mark in time. Unexposed, consistent, yard in form, 18 to 1. Come on, Josh, consider him in more depth and do not be drawn in by those near the top of the market. We then moved on to, so that was another couple of losers there. We then moved on to the Kelso race that I tipped in. Can I live with Harry the Viking not being anywhere near him? Maybe, but again, there's always something to learn. What do I want to focus on here? A prominent racer. So here's the pace map in kind of graphic form. You can see there in kind of 4th. So he would be near the front. I knew in my head that he was such a good jumper. Again, I was dissuaded by his age. Another one, look, where the yard is in red hot form going into this. I was probably lured into how bad a run that Carlisle run was on his return, but I didn't view that in the context of, and I tick round to 19 minutes, so it might be a bit longer than 20. I didn't look at that in the context that this was the target. This race wasn't run in 2017. It was run in 2016, where he won, as you can see down here, 4th of December, won by 5 lengths, eased down off 120. And he'd shown some form fairly recently in, well, a year ago, I should say, November 17, after 191-day break, he won well enough. And that was on okay ground, that was a bit testing. But that was off 1-2-1. He then ran in heavy, and he's never been great in heavy and proper soft. So he ran there. Then at Perth, weakened from next, again, soft ground there. But he was getting older, and he's lightly raced in recent years, and it was clear, and I should have registered it before the race, that this was the target, this was his Gold Cup. And he's pretty much going to be minded for this race, and he's going to come back next year, all being well, age 14. He might not run again until next November, and then come back to have another crack at it. But he was well handicapped enough. The mark wasn't going to be a problem. And yes, the trainer form, this was the target. He was 16, 18 to 1 with 16 runners. Actually, this is where an each way mindset may have been better, because I may have thought there would be unexposed ones in here that would surely beat him. But it wasn't hard to think that he was going to run his race and he was going to stay. He was here to run the race of his life. And it would be pretty hard to imagine him actually outside of the places. But I say that in hindsight. Yarding cracking form, 4 miles. I like in these races actually to try and get a horse on side who's proven in conditions, and then one who might improve for them, and might have a bit in hand and might be a bit more unexposed. I went with Total Assets here, which was just stupid. Why was it stupid? Because I knew she would be held up out the back of the telly. She would have to make ground. She would have to jump well. In the end, she got too far detached. Needing to close that pace all the time led to errors and jumping mistakes. And she's still only beaten 9 lengths. If she gets dropped back down into a class 4, if possible, or a weaker class 3, back in proper soft, the ground might have been too quick for her here as well. She's got wins in her still age 10 because she is unexposed over these trips, but you want a decent price because of her running style, and she'll always need a bit of luck and need to jump well. Looking well, I should focus on any backers of this horse, probably unlucky to a point. I think actually he probably was coming to win, or it certainly looked that way. The Musselburgh run here in February proved that he stayed the trip because he was winning and bolting up that day before he swerved at the last and unseated. He'd run well at Perth. That run there was probably to blow the cobwebs away. Another one where the yard was in form. He had cheek piece on to help with his jumping, and the poor horse fell a few from home when looking like he was going to tank up. But he's unexposed for his age under these staying trips. And if he can jump well, looking well, should have a race like this in him. And he did race more prominently there than he has done before, and that's a positive. So that's that race. A few things to learn there from Harry the Viking. I think, yes, the jumping, the galloping, the fact it was a target, a plan. I knew he'd race prominently. I knew he was one of the best jumpers in the field. The each-way mindset possibly may have helped me find him closer, although I am generally a win-only punter. But there's things for me to learn there in a race like this. We rattle on, 2 more left. 22 minutes. I'm not going to focus on this too much, but another one where I was lured in by a short price in Rock the Casbah. Oh dear, stop doing it to myself. I actually thought he might outclass these, but he was up £6 in weight, and actually more importantly, he was up a stone in actual weight on his back, and I think that actual weight caused him to change his rhythm and not jump as well as he has done before. Clearly, you've got to lug more weight over fences, going as strong a pace. But I won't focus on too much. So I should have, and again, this is where maybe an each way mindset might have helped. Colgary, why could we have been close to him at 10, 11 to 1? And when Colgary wins at a nice price, it's always a bit painful. Firstly, he has a great record under Sam Twiston-Davies. He generally only jumps for him. What happened at Cheltenham on the old course here is that Coneygree did take him on. If you watch it back, and that's another thing I've got better at, I think, in the last couple of months, but not necessarily yet in these races, is watching back replays and getting a kind of idea of how races have been run. Firstly, that Relentless Dreamer one was pretty decent. The front 2 were miles clear that day. We know he loves it around Cheltenham. He was taken on by Coneygree and actually rocked the Casbah as well, and he was taken out of his comfort zone a bit. He does like to lead and dominate, and actually I think he probably did too much. And he did weaken too from home, kind of over an extra furlong. He came to the kind of stiffer new course here, I suppose, drop-in trip. And he got an easier lead, which was actually obvious, I think. If you can see here, I knew and made a decision that Theatre Territory they may not be as aggressive because she was stepping up in trip and had stamina to prove, although she was up there. But it wasn't impossible actually that Coney Gray may be able to get an easier lead. And if he got into a jumping rhythm, we knew he stayed, we knew he galloped. And actually, while he did have a poor record in Grade 3s and listed races, actually this is his first win at this kind of Class 1 level in handicaps. It was definitely one of the weaker ones he'd run in. And if I assumed Theatre Territory, I read her right. I didn't think she would quite stay, and I think stamina had just beaten her. If I then had more, well, in that sense, probably there were two places to play it. I knew Single Farm Payment, bless him, did have a liking for throwing races away, which he did do here, in fairness. But again, this is where maybe an each way mindset would have helped. Taking on Rock the Casbah, assuming that weight may actually have an issue, and of course he had it to prove from a £6 high mark. And what I didn't take into account there was actually it had two, well, that was a hard run last time out, and it wasn't impossible he actually left his running there, which is, as it transpired, is what he did. He didn't run his race for whatever reason. Maybe it was weight, maybe it was that hard run before. But yes, Kogri, another one. I should have realised that he might get an easier lead. He would travel. He was a decent price. He was an each way price. I was happy to take on one favourite who I thought actually might not place because she might not stay. In the end, well, that was the case. She's being 15 lengths. I knew Single Farm might be thereabouts, but didn't like battling. I was happy to take on quite the rest actually. Rolling Dylan ran a lot better than I thought he would, but again, a yard in form and a second season chaser. And they are always dangerous. Second season chasers. Come on, let's get that in my head. Especially those that have been running well and knew how to win for yards that were at the top of their game. So that was a decent run for him. He's clearly got a decent handicap in him. Maybe not a grade 3, but certainly got a class 2 handicap in him, maybe at Cheltenham sometime. Rock the Casbah, we'll see where he turns up next, but he clearly is now open to anything from attack with a bit more in hand, and maybe he needs to see if he can be a graded level animal, grade 2 or something, in open company. So that's that. A few things there to learn from Kogri in terms of, like I've said, all those things. I'm not going to repeat myself, but various things there to take away and learn from that. And finally, let's move on to the Caspian Caviar Gold Cup, where again, Josh, what are you doing? You steamed into Baron Alco at 13-2. And Guitar Pete, who ran well, I don't mind that bet. He was a 10-1 shot. There are a couple things for me to learn from here that I haven't mentioned as yet. Some of the things, they kind of tick a lot of the same boxes I've mentioned. But first thing is price disparity. Now, I was blinkered. I've been blinkered before. I looked at Baron Alco, I looked at Rather Be. I was like, how the hell is he twice the price? I still think that was a correct assessment. But given Frodon was only 2 lengths behind him on the run before, surely that, even though their ratings went up the same, it was the same kind of difference in ratings, whatever, surely that 2-length defeat shouldn't have made him be 11-1, which he was available generally the evening before and places in the morning, 10-1 generally in the morning, and Baron Alco kind of 6-1, 13-2. There shouldn't have been that price disparity, and I really should have put more focus on that. The horse had won the race before, of course. He's clearly only 6. We knew he could carry big weight. Why should I have? I should have been cautious on Baron Alco. Now, the other thing I'll say about 2-length defeat in a handicap chase, that is one bad mistake. That is one bad getting out of your rhythm. Baron Alco made 2 or 3 mistakes through this race, which added up far more to the 2 lengths. And I could assume with a shorter price horse at the top of the market, what if he makes one mistake? He was flawless when he beat Frodon on the race before, but what's to say he won't be flawless this time? One mistake, that is easily 2 lengths. You lose that at the fence. Not a lot, without kind of homing in on the energy that might actually take out the horse for the finish. The second thing with Baron Alco that I didn't think about in enough depth, this run at Chepstow was after what, 500 plus days off, and then he ran and had that hard race at Cheltenham. It wasn't impossible that he'd actually that's 2 hard races after a long break, and that it may kind of impact him. The reasons I gave for Baron Alco were all solid. I don't have a problem with that. And he will show himself, I think he'll show himself 152, so still be in range for the handicap at some point. But for whatever reason, he didn't run his race. Frodon did break his heart. What I also didn't consider, that price disparity, Frodon should have been much closer there. I also didn't think that Bryony Frost may be more aggressive, actually. She clearly thinks about the game very well. she probably concluded she let Baranalco in that race there get into a rhythm, and she might conclude she had the better jumper, better galloper, and actually I'm going to make better use of him. I thought Baranalco would actually appreciate this track a bit more and might actually stay better. But those comments equally apply to Frodon, given it one round the new course. That's actually where he's performed best. And stamina wasn't going to be a problem. Weight carried wasn't going to be a problem, as it showed there with that 2 length defeat. So the price disparity was all wrong. And the final thing I want to say about him, knowing that he would travel kind of on the pace and jump and everything there that I've just said, that pace map's not loading. Hold on. The final thing I wanted to focus on was my stats. I put them up in the free post. I put the write up in, but what I should have focused on, and Josh, what are you doing? I had 10 from 10 stats, which focused on, well, you can see the shortlist there in front of you. There was those horses that had run in a group, had run in a grade 1 before and were running in this rest pattern here. Left 8 from 48, 19 place in the last 10 years. Generally was the place to focus, and that left 4. Rather be 3 to 1, let's take on. Baranalco 6 to 1, let's take on. Why not, Josh? Just go with the 2 horses which are double figure prices and put 1 point on each, and I could be sitting here 9 points richer. Really, really silly. And the final thing is there, what else could have tipped me over into Frodon's edge? You'll see the stats and trends I put from the race here. Look at the trainer record, for the love of God. Paul Nicholls in the Caspian Caviar Gold Cup, 4th from 19, 7th place in the last decade, including Frodon for one of those victories. I knew he'd race prominently. I knew he'd be up there. Guitar Pete, actually, I knew he'd be held up. He'd have to jump well. He'd have to travel better. So always, horse at a price, that price disparity I've mentioned, if they're going to race prominently, if they're superb jumpers, give them more of a chance and upgrade their chance there. So that's the kind of things I will focus on Frodon. There are plenty of things there for me to take away. Yeah, trainer patterns. The fact he has class. Some of these bigger handicap chases are, top weights that have class and ability. He was £12 better rated than the next horse in. £12 for a reason, because of what he's done on form to date. It was clear he was going to run up to his mark again, as evidenced by that run before. And yeah, he shouldn't have been 4 or 5 points bigger than Baranalco. I say that with hindsight. I clearly did not think that before the race, and I should have done. The final horse I'll mention is Cepage for Venetia Williams, who ran very well. And actually, if you read my write-up, was one I feared. He'd have actually, in hindsight, again, of course, may have been a better 12s instead of Guitar Pete. That Kempton run there, actually, he did hack up. It might not have been the strongest, actually. The second's only okay. He goes outpaced there at Cheltenham on good. 2 miles, 5 furlongs on the new course on soft might be what he wants. I think this is a horse that's well handicapped, clearly, because he's just chased home a 164 horse. He travelled and jumped better than he'd done there. I think he might be worth a go at 3 miles in time. But maybe 21 furlongs on softer ground. Maybe they'll aim again this season for that Kempton race. But he was impressive there, actually, if you watch that. He won a lot more easily than the winning distance would suggest. But he's an unexposed chaser for Venetia Williams, who looks quite a big, strong 6-year-old. That was also his first run of the season, although she can get them fit. Cepage is the one to take from that race, I think. And I believe Nicky Richards is going to try Guitar Pete over 3 miles, which, given his age now, given how he runs, certainly wouldn't be a bad effort. And he still has handicap chases in him from this mark of 138 this year, maybe dropped in class and carrying a bit more weight against lesser opposition. So I wanted this to be 20 minutes, but it's 33, as is my want. But I've covered a fair bit there in a short space of time. Hopefully you found some of those points interesting. I've mentioned a few things there, a lot of things crossing over. There's plenty there that I need to nail and drill into this thick skull of mine for the last kind of few big races that I've looked at. So apologies if you've been on them. Overall, I'm still happy, 190 points up for the year, but I've given back quite a few within the last few weeks and last couple of months. The evidence from my new test in terms of my tipping for the stats and things is indicating that I can read a race quite well, and I am finding winners, and I'm turning over a profit in that little bit. I just need to separate my mind mentally, especially price, when I analyse these big races. So I'm going to focus on bigger price horses. I should always be able to cope and live with shorter price horses, under 8 to 1, 6 to 1 or shorter, winning these big Saturday handicap chases. I should live with that because I know over time enough bigger price ones will win. And actually, I know over time from history that I will land on enough. But clearly, I've needed to tinker with a few things in my head. And all those things I've just discussed in this video I will try and put into practice for the rest of the jump season. And you can join me on that journey, especially in the free post with any chases 3 miles or further, and see if I can do that. So I hope you've found that video useful. I hope there's your thing you can take away from that video. And this is Josh saying thanks for watching. Until the next time, bye for now. I won't be recording another video before Christmas, so have a very Merry Christmas. Have a great time with your families. Drink plenty, get merry, enjoy the company of friends and family. That's what this time of year is about, especially, and enjoy some of the brilliant racing that will be on over the festive calendar. There will be enough races looked at in the free posts. And yeah, I hope you have a great festive period. So yeah, Merry Christmas from me. And until the next time, this is Josh saying bye for now and take care.